Welcome to the Curiosity Crisis. We challenge ourselves to explore the world of business, tech, investing, and science. Get curious and be part of the journey as we discuss, challenge, and learn. So today we're chatting to a friend of the show, Cam Bostock. Cam hikes, travels, and inspires others for a living. We love what Cam does so much that this is actually his second time on the podcast. And the big reason we really wanted to chat to him again was in that last episode, we recorded it the day before he flew to America, before he started the Pacific Crest Trail, or the PCT. And Cam has just touched down back in Australia after hiking for 5 months from Mexico to Canada along the PCT. There's just so much that would come from hiking for 2,940 miles or 4,730 kilometers, and for days, weeks, and months on end. So we just had to get Cam back on to hear the story, his learnings, and all about the PCT. So without further ado, let's get into it. How are you, Cam? Welcome home.
Thanks, boys. I am, I'm doing well. Happy to be home, that's for sure. But incredible journey over in the US.
Yeah, welcome back to Australia, and just thought we'd pick your brain on the first question we always ask, which is what's keeping you curious at the moment?
Yes, great question as always. Probably the last few weeks I've been very curious about how life will be back home because I was away for 5 months. I've basically been living on trail in the wild, completely different to how I would live here in general, and so it's been interesting to think about how life will be post such a big adventure. And now that I'm sort of back, I've been back for a week and living that, it's very interesting kind of adapting back to regular life. So that's been a fun little process. Yeah,
so Kush obviously, gave a bit of a background to what you've just done, but I was wondering if you could give us a more complete synopsis of what you actually just did, like what the PCT is, and I don't think we could really do it justice trying to explain the absolute adventure that you've just been on. Do you want to give us just a quick overview of kind of what you actually just did?
Yeah, sure. So the Pacific Crest Trail is probably the most iconic through hiking trail on planet Earth. It's almost 3,000 miles long. Traverses the west coast of the US from Mexico to Canada. So you're crossing the entire country, which is really cool. And it's just a wild trail. It's so diverse and so beautiful, and it goes through so many different landscapes and environments, and it's just a crazy experience. And not many people finish the trail every year. A few thousand people start it. It's quite hard to get a permit. It's quite popular, but very hard to finish because just the sheer length. Really, it's a long way. Speaking in kilometer terms, it's like 4,500 kilometers. So obviously that takes many months, and so many things can go wrong in that time. I was lucky enough to make it to the end, and just the best thing I've ever done. Really incredible trail.
That's so epic. Like, I guess we've been fans, like lots and lots of other people on Instagram, and followed the journey through your reels and what you're posting, what you are sharing on your stories. So shout out if anyone hasn't seen that. I'm sure you have, but check out Cam Bostock on Instagram and you can follow it and relive it. But look, a lot happened from what we saw. There was fires, trail closures, side missions. You did a 24-hour straight hiking challenge, and then incredible views, peaks. You talked a lot about the trail angels and the trail community and epic towns you went through, which I'm really keen to hear. All about. But let's start maybe with some of the highlights and some of the unexpected highlights that you've done a lot of through hiking before. But what did you get out of the PCT and what blew you away?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the trail angels and the trail community, and for me that was the biggest unexpected highlight. I have done a few big trails before in Australia and New Zealand, and there's just something special about the trail community in the US. There's so much history around the Pacific Crest Trail and through hiking in general. The PCT's been around for 60, 80 years, something like that. So it's an old trail, and all the towns and the people that sort of live near the trail know about it and love through hikers and are so generous towards through hikers. And for me, that was just, it was the best bit, to be honest. So many kind people, so much love, and people that are hiking the trail with you as well. Everyone's just so friendly, and I think, I don't know, in Australia at least, you hear a lot of negative things about the US, at least from the news and all kinds of media. So I feel like going over there, I had some negative perceptions, not all negative, but I had nothing but positive experiences there with the people and the towns and the trail. And so for me, that was a huge highlight and something that I think out of all the things I experienced over there, I remember the people the most. But obviously the trail and the landscapes, incredibly beautiful. Some of the most beautiful places that I've hiked in the world. And so that was another major highlight.
It seemed like, every second week you're getting a care package from someone too. It seemed like you had a lot of support, from obviously people that you just met and then people in towns and then, just like...
so much support.
It seemed like there was a lot of people really getting around it, which is awesome.
People just open their houses up to you. So like we stayed at people's homes and people, like you said, send you care packages to different spots, and it's just, you feel the love.
I guess in today's world as well, that seems so unheard of. Like, there's so much about security and there's a lot of distance, I guess, within communities. But this is literally strangers just opening their lives, their homes, their generosity, their care to you, which is so unique. That's awesome. I also saw you hiked with a couple of people for a lot of the journey, and then different people along the journey. Is that quite? I guess, is that common? Like, I know you've done previous hikes before where you were kind of solo the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, historically, I've hiked solo for most of my trips, and that's what I prefer to do. It's how I enjoy the trail the most, because I do tend to really enjoy pushing myself and walking big miles, and I think walking with other people, it puts some limitations on how fast or slow you end up walking if you want to stay with them. But there is a huge culture on the Pacific Crest Trail of forming little trail families and meeting and hiking with people. So I wasn't really sure what to expect when I started. I kind of intended to just walk alone like I usually would, but I ended up meeting people pretty much in the first week of the trail. And one guy in particular, another Aussie dude named Dan, we ended up hiking together for pretty much the entire trail from day 4 to the end. And then, at one point we had a group of 7 of us that hiked together for, 2 months or so. And I ended the trail with Dan and this chick called Emma, who we hiked together for a long time as well. So I had so much fun, hiking in a group, which I never really thought I'd say, but it was epic. And those guys are just so awesome, best friends for life. You don't really spend that much time with anyone in everyday life, besides my wife. I don't think I've spent more than a couple hours a week with any one person, over an extended period of time. Whereas we were spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for literally 5 months together. And so you build a real bond, you're doing really tough stuff together constantly. And it was really cool.
Especially on some of those big days, like the tough times. I remember one of your reels was looking at you're just covered in mosquitoes, and you're like, this sucks. And just all of those things, just going through everything.
The mosquitoes in Australia, we think they're bad, but there was a 2 or 3 week period where the snow melts, and so there's a lot of water everywhere, and the mosquitoes start breeding. And it happens every year at a different time, and we experienced that sort of halfway through the trek, and it was just hell on earth for 2 or 3 weeks. And nothing compares to that even here. It's crazy.
And you only had a pair of shorts, I think, too. So
just shorts, and I had a face net to at least protect my face, but you just get attacked, and they'll follow you for miles down the trail, and they somehow keep up with you, and just there's nothing you can really do about it. Obviously you spray yourself with bug spray or whatnot, but they're relentless.
So I guess along from that, Kush asked you about kind of the highlight. What was the scariest thing that happened? I know that when you were comparing hiking with people to being alone, you were saying that I guess the thought of a mountain lion or something becomes a bit more significant when you're just by yourself. So what was the craziest thing that happened, do you reckon?
There's definitely a fear of the wildlife. It's funny because Americans think Australia is the scariest place on earth as far as going into nature
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
snakes and spiders, it doesn't make sense to me. And every American I talk to just wouldn't give in to the fact that America is actually so much scarier because they've got snakes and spiders. We saw rattlesnakes everywhere, and those things are deadly. And then they've got literally got bears and cougars, and people get killed by them sometimes, and that is terrifying to me.
Yeah,
we have nothing big here that's dangerous, and so for me, definitely at the start at least, the idea of seeing a bear or like especially a cougar who have been known to like stalk hikers and attack hikers on occasion, that was terrifying for sure. And I think I saw 6 bears throughout the trek, and there's only black bears on and around the trail, and black bears aren't typically very aggressive, and so the more I saw them and the more I talked to people that had experiences with black bears, they weren't really scary by the end of it. And like, I was within 10 meters of a black bear multiple times on trail, and the heart rate goes up and whatnot, but they're not going to attack you, most of the time. But the idea of a cougar stalking you in the dark, that is terrifying. Luckily I didn't see one, but I'm pretty sure that cougars saw me plenty of times. I wouldn't be surprised.
Really? That's so scary. Like, you just know that these eyes looking at you, but you have no idea. Oh my God.
And other hikers saw them, so they were there.
Wow.
Okay, they were definitely there.
Yeah, they were there.
I remember I was hiking in Canada once, and the scariest thing to actually get past was a moose. I thought they'd be super chill, but because they're just like, I think he was pretty aggressive, maybe protecting like his wife or his kid or whatever. But they had the massive antlers and were just like staring at me and on the trail, and I couldn't really get past. And I was like, well, if you have one good hit at me, I'm done here. So
yeah, they're huge, right? I didn't see any because we were a bit further south, but they're massive, right? That'd be terrifying.
Yeah,
absolutely. I wanted to ask, like, obviously you've done hiking before, but maybe a lot of our listeners haven't. What does it feel like? And you talked about this at the start. What does it feel like hiking for 5 months straight? Just knowing you're going to wake up every day to life on the trail.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild experience. I mean, I have hiked before, but nowhere near that long. This is probably like double the longest hike I had done previously. So, it's a very big adjustment period towards the start. Like, just as I'm adjusting to being back at home now, when I started the trail, it's a big adjustment period. Your body's just adapting. Your mind's coming to terms with the fact that this is life now. It's an interesting process. It can be hard at times, but by about a month or so in, everything's sort of your body and mind are on the same page, and it's just like, this is life now. And as someone who loves spending time in nature and camping and just roughing it and challenging myself, it was the best thing ever. I loved being out there for that long. It was just the most epic thing, and I already miss it. I've been off for a week and I miss it as much as I'm wanted to get home by the end of the trail, and I missed family and whatnot. I could go back out there for sure.
It's mate, you only just got
so
back.
Nice.
A quick one also. I mean, obviously you talked about like how iconic and massive and epic the PCT is. How distinctly different have you found it from some of your other massive through hikes? For example, the Bilbin Track, or some of the stuff you've done in Tassie, or in Nepal. Like, how different is the PCT?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I found that was super different was just like the through hiking culture in America in general, just the trail community and the history, and it's just like a part of life over there if you're near the trail. Whereas I think some of the other places I've gone to, like New Zealand and like the Bib Track here in Western Australia, there's not as much of a history and a culture around it, and trail families aren't as prevalent, trail angels aren't as prevalent, and so just the vibe over there around through hiking is quite different, and obviously the wildlife and the landscapes are different as well. But for me, that was the most radical change, was just basically the community and the feel of being on trail.
Just a quick intermission. Thanks so much for listening. If we could just ask a quick favor, if you could send this to a friend and recommend it, we would greatly appreciate it. It's easy to do and it helps the show out. Thanks.
I mean, it is, I guess, 5 months, but I guess one thing we wanted to like ask you for, like, I guess ourselves and our listeners, like, your story sounds epic and incredible and super adventurous, but also scary and big and unknown. Like, what would you tell someone that's inspired but intimidated by your story? Like, they want to go do a big hike or adventure, but have no idea where to start. Like, what advice would you give? Would you say do the PCT or something over there, or what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, it's no doubt very intimidating, especially if it's like you haven't done much backpacking before. But a lot of people ask me that, like, I want to do the PCT. It's always been a dream of mine, but I'm just like terrified of it. And I mean, yeah, the simple answer is just go for it. It's scary, but it's interesting because like a hike like the PCT, it's basically just like a heap of 5-day backpacking trips back to back to back, because you'll get to towns and you'll resupply and reset in a town, and you just go out again. And so if you think about it like that, it's a little less daunting, I would say. And another piece of advice that I give to people that are going to start a big hike like the PCT is to just not plan, basically. Like, I didn't plan further ahead than like 2 days probably when I started. I didn't even know what was ahead. Like, I didn't know what towns were there or whatever. You know, it was just like I set foot on trail and I'll just figure it out as I go. And that just takes so much pressure off your shoulders, I think, because you know, like I said, it's just like, okay, I got a 5-day section and then there's a town there. Let's get through that and then figure out the next section, and you're just going to meet people out there and everything sort of happens. Like, there's a saying on the PCT at least where it's like the trail provides, and it always is true somehow. The trail just provides, you know, things just work out. And so
it's such an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Is that you're like, oh, it's like a 5-day, but you just keep doing it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And
yeah, so when you think about it like that, it's like, it's not as crazy, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, you know, lots of people plan, you know, 3 or 5 days or whatever, and they'll go do one. And so I guess, yeah, if you keep thinking of it like that and you reset when you get to the next town along the way, yeah, it feels much more manageable, I guess.
Totally.
So I guess, like, talking about your experience, and, you know, before we were discussing how it ended up being about, you know, 5 months for you, like a huge amount of time. You know, being outdoors, time with yourself and time with other people that you'd never met, obviously. I guess, like, what does that do to you? You know, like, having been out there for so long, like last time you were on the show, we talked about kind of like the value of being outside. You know, you said like people should just get outside. It's so good for you. You know, clear your mind. Yeah. Did you find anything significant, especially given the length of time that you were out there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, doing something like that is life-changing. And like you mentioned, I think being outside is the most powerful thing that anyone can do for physical and mental health. And so extended periods outside is just going to, you know, exaggerate those positive effects. And so being out there for 5 months, I have never felt better in my entire life. Just so mentally clear, cool. So at peace, and just like constantly challenging myself every day in so many different aspects is just so powerful for personal growth. And I do feel like a different person afterwards. You know, I was able to challenge myself socially and physically and psychologically and all these different ways. And it's just so good for you. And I felt the effects of that constantly. And the longer I was out there, the better I felt. I just, you know, felt at one with nature and all these things. And yeah, it was incredible, man.
One of my favorite reels that you posted was you had like the voice overlay of Gandalf speaking to I think, I'm not sure whether it was Lord of the Rings or whether it was The Hobbit. I think
it was The Hobbit.
It was Bilbo or Bilbo. I think it was The Hobbit. Yeah, Hobbit, yeah. And it was when he's saying like, "Can you guarantee safety?" And he's like, "No, but you will come back. Like, this will change you." And I was like, "Oh man, this is such a great analogy for your like 5-month hike." It's like it was so good. And I guess I
love that quote.
You know, talking about that, like, what was your kind of like why for doing the hike? And obviously, you know, initially you thought you were going to hike a lot of it by yourself, and you didn't end up doing that. So yeah, did that change? Did anything kind of change along the way?
Yeah, I mean, going into it, I wanted the adventure. That's pretty much what I wanted. I wanted something that would challenge me, something, you know, something new that was longer and bigger and harder than the things I'd done before. And I definitely got that. You know, it was incredible. But I think my why definitely sort of changed as I went along, because like you said, really? I went there thinking I'd hike alone, and so that's, you know, its own challenge. And then I ended up just hiking with the same people. I pretty much didn't hike alone for many days the entire trip. So that whole
Yeah.
perception changed, and by the end of it, I felt like I was out there to just be with these people that I had spent so much time with and just experience it all together. And so it kind of shifted from that solo adventure and that solo challenge to doing, I guess, all the same things but with the group. And
Yeah.
that was something I didn't expect to happen, but it really did. You know, we had such a
That's
tight-knit
awesome.
little trio by the end of it, and I wouldn't have
Yeah.
wanted to hike alone. You know, I wouldn't have wanted to finish alone. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's such a cool like shared experience and such a cool like I know you already said it, but like when you're literally living inside each other's lives, 24/7, 360, like not 365, but like all day, every day, and in such an environment that's like free of the rest of the developed world's like stimuli or distractions and stuff like that. You really, I guess, get to know each other, which is
Yeah.
that's so cool.
That's the best part of being out there, is you are so removed from all the world and the crazy stuff that's happening. Like, we're in the US, so there's all this stuff with politics and election cycles and stuff, and it's just like we leave a town and that's just all gone. No one's talking about that. It's just like you're in the middle of nowhere, disconnected from it all, and it's the best thing in the world.
Yeah, like your only other input is other people who are also on the trail, and their only other input is other people who are also on the trail. So you're just like,
Yeah, it's a
you're
great
like
little
not
bubble.
isolated, but you are, and it's so interesting.
Totally.
That's a pretty good community as well, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've already talked about it, but what are some of the biggest things you've learned or something surprising that you learned and you've taken away after the 5-month trip?
Yeah, well, I've touched on it, but I definitely was surprised to learn that I love hiking in a group, because before this, I would have said that in 99% of situations, I would choose to just go out onto a trail alone. But I just loved hiking with people so much. There was something about just meeting people from all around the world with all these different life experiences, all different stages of life, and then all just doing the same hard thing together and going through the same experience together. That was super powerful. Like that group of 7 that we had for the first half of the trail, we had like 2 Australians, a couple of Americans, and then we had a Belgian, a Dane, and a Slovak. So it was so diverse, and no one knew each other before the trail, and then somehow you're just this little family, and I just didn't think I'd love that so much. It was weird,
Yeah.
and it challenged me a lot socially as well, because like I'm super introverted in everyday life, and that's probably why a lot of the reason why I hike alone a lot. But being a part of that community each and every day was it pushed me in that kind of realm as well, which was super cool.
Yeah.
That's so
awesome.
epic. Yeah, wow. And like, I guess you also learnt that just by being in it all day, every day. And I'm sure if you really, really wanted, you break off and do your own thing. But like, I guess you kind of just got swallowed into it, and then you were enjoying
Yeah.
it, and that was that.
Yeah, I did break off a couple of times, which was nice, but
Yep.
yeah, 90% of the time was with the crew. It was sick.
A lot of those were you going off and doing another section of the hike that you wanted to do separate from the PCT, though, weren't they?
Yeah, there are a lot of obviously the trail just goes through wilderness areas, and so you're always seeing these offshoots of different trails. And most people will just hike or stay on the PCT because it's long enough. But there was a few trails I really wanted to do off the main trail, and so occasionally I'd separate and leave the group just to go experience some other things and extend the adventure a little bit, which in hindsight was so worth it. Because I think you mentioned towards the start there was quite a few trail closures due to like wildfires that were happening, and so had to skip some trail on the PCT. So the fact that I got to do all these other routes kind of made up for that, which was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw as well, like some of the massive peaks that you did, like it probably can't, I don't know, we haven't mentioned it, but it can't be understated just how ridiculously fit you are and you would have been on this trek. Like 24 hours hiking, all the peaks you did, over 4,000 kilometers, like none, and every time I watched a reel, like I had to pinch myself just how many Ks you're doing. Like you were dropping 30, 40-mile days just like it was nothing. And for other people, a hike that's longer than, for Australians, like I guess 20 Ks is considered super, super long. So how are you feeling? Are you just feeling incredible?
Yeah, I'm the fittest I've ever been. you feel like a superhuman on a through hike. It's a really crazy feeling because once that you get to that point where your body starts to adapt and realizes this is what we do all day, every day, just like diverts all resources to recovery and to building that fitness up, and you just feel so powerful. Like you said, we're walking 50 kilometers a day for 20 days in a row sometimes. Just absolutely huge amounts of distance, and it felt like it was hard sometimes if there was a lot of hills, whatever, but like it felt pretty doable. And we climbed some big mountains and just ridiculous amounts of vertical gain, and your body just becomes like a superhuman. It's wild, and I think it's a draw for a lot of people, is that you can just access this fitness that you just never could in everyday life, because you're never going to be training for 10 or 12 hours a day like you are on a through hike. And the biggest challenge for me is getting home now and like realizing that this fitness is just going to drop off a cliff, and like how in the world do I keep it? So I'm just trying to hang on to it as long as I can and use it for something or whatever, because I'm never going to be this fit again, that's for sure.
And I'm sure you're super proud of it as well, because like you said, people get injured. Like that's no small feat at all. Like hiking that much for that long, that consistently, that hard. It looked really hot sometimes. Like those conditions were unforgiving. So to get through really, really strongly, you must feel just super proud.
Yeah, I didn't get injured once, and I didn't get a blister once, didn't get sick once. In a way, I was lucky, but also I have a lot of experience with this kind of thing, and so I knew how to ease into it and avoid all those things. And so I was able to make it to the end. But, like I said, a couple thousand people start the Pacific Crest Trail each year. There's probably 3,000 starters this year. And if I had to guess, there wouldn't have been more than 500 people that walked the entire trail and got to the end. So most people will get injured, or they'll get sick, or something will happen and they'll have to quit the trail. That's, it's way more common than not. And so, managing your body and your health is such an important aspect of the hike. And I'm stoked with how my body held up through it. That's for sure.
It truly is like phenomenal that you did that. I mean, like I got injured for training for the Sydney Marathon a few weeks ago, and I've barely been running at all, and it would just be so easy to get overuse and injuries. So I think it's actually
super common.
Amazing that you were able to pull off what you did. I mean, last time you were on the show, we talked a little bit about like kind of the business side and like how it actually worked for you, because obviously it's your job. And I was wondering if like, did anything change for you with the business in terms of like fundamentals, or like where like revenue's coming from, or like, do you view it the same as like before you went? Because it's such a large portion. I know we talked a little bit about the difficulties of having to do like, like paperwork when you're on a trail for months and months. So, do you have anything to say about kind of the business side?
Yeah, well, I was very intentional about this through hike, because in previous hikes I'd done, specifically like New Zealand last year, I went in with a mindset of like, I can probably make some good money while I'm out here, because brands will want to work with me because I'm posting and getting a lot of attention. And like you said, it was just so stressful because I had to do all this contracts and paperwork and invoicing while I was hiking, and I hated it so much. It wasn't worth it. So this trip I was like, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to take a step back from the real hustle business side of what I do, and really just rely on sort of like my passive income sources, which was like my Patreon community and that kind of thing. And I lent into that quite a bit on trail. Because I produced a vlog every single day of the trip, and I love it so much, and so it comes sort of somewhat easy to me, but it's definitely mentally exhausting doing that, and adding all these other stretches is just, it wouldn't have been sustainable on the PCT. This is such a longer and harder hike. And so I was lucky enough to get a lot of support online. I reached a lot of new people on Instagram through the videos I was putting out. My Patreon community grew quite a lot, to the point where it was able to sustain me just fine on trail, and super grateful for that. And now I'm sort of switching back into that sort of hustle mindset, that I'm home and sort of capitalize on the growth I had, and see what kind of opportunities pop up. And in hindsight, it was a great decision. I probably could have made a bunch of money, working with brands while I was out there, but I was just able to really enjoy the experience and not stress myself out. over all that
Be
kind of
super
stuff while
authentic as
while I
well.
was hiking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's also a big part of it. I didn't feel like I was pressured to say this or that, which I don't usually, but that kind of thing does come in, especially when you don't have as much time to negotiate or to chat about things, and you're just saying yes to everything like I have in the past. So yeah, it was a very relaxed.
I was wondering
trip
about
in
that
that
actually.
regard.
You edited so many of these reels, and I was wondering, how did you go with like Signal and like did you have like a catalog of like music that you could like overlay? Did you have that like all locally? Like how did you handle that, or was it just like you had Signal the whole trip?
Definitely didn't have signal the whole trip. There were times where I
Right.
didn't have signal for a week, and so yeah, I had a bit of a process. So I'd edit in my tent every night, and then if I didn't have reception, I couldn't really complete the edit because, like you said, like I didn't have access to music, and I couldn't upload it obviously as well. And so basically, all of my vlogs were about a week delayed behind real time,
Right.
and so I was able to like schedule posts. So, for example, if I knew I wouldn't have reception for 5 or 7 days, I would just like get a bunch of videos done, schedule them when I had reception in a town or whatever, and then while I was out of reception, they'd all be going up sort of in the background, and then I just repeat that process for parts where I didn't have signal. Which, I mean, most of the trail didn't have signal. It was mainly towns or when you're near towns that you got some sort of connection. And so delaying everything like that was basically the solution to being able to post consistently still. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I guess we're nearly at time. So if we're allowed to ask, because I know you just got back from probably one of the biggest trips of your life, what's next? What do you have in the works? Like, what does Cam Bostock want to do next?
Yeah, definitely going to relax for a little bit. That's for sure.
Yeah.
My wife needs some Cam time. That's for sure. She's graciously let me go on hike for 5 months, and so I've got to repay the favour a little bit. But I also just love Western Australia this time of year. Spring coming into summer is epic, and I miss the beach and the weather, and so I'll be chilling for at least a couple months. Always got some adventures planned though, so probably coming towards the end of the year and into next year there'll be lots of stuff happening. But for now I'm working on like a short film from the PCT, from the trip, so going to put a little film together, which is really exciting. Probably take quite a bit of my time over the next couple of weeks to put together. Working on a brand and a business that we're launching soon, called OptiVenture, which I think you guys know a little bit about, aiming to sort of really simplify supplementation on these big trips, on travel and through hikes, on expeditions. And so yeah, I've been working on that with a mate of mine, Hirsch, who I think you know, Kush.
Yeah, I do.
For like a year. And
Yeah,
I was
I
was testing the product, actually the entire Pacific Crest Trail, and it's incredible. So really excited to launch that pretty soon as well.
I think you
Wow.
dropped it on like day 20 something, 28 maybe. I think it was like
Yeah.
the first time that you went through the gear and you're like, hey, there's this thing.
Yeah.
It's a supplement. It's actually my supplement. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, so I was using
Yeah.
it the whole trek, and dropped it a couple of times, but it's going to be good now that we've got all the branding and stuff happening, and kind of finalize the product and the formulation to share it with the world. It's going to be awesome.
Can't wait to hear more about it. Yeah, obviously I've had a bit of insight, but I'm very, very keen to hear all about it, see everything about it, and release it. Because
Yeah.
obviously, if it sustained you so well for 5 months over, some of the most rugged terrain and one of the most challenging through hikes in the world, like there's got to be something to it. So
It was a
I'm
game
very,
changer
very
for
excited
me.
to hear more.
Yeah, so thanks heaps for chatting us through, this whole PCT trip and all of these little extra bits of information
Of course.
that we wanted to know. I guess, yeah, if a listener could get anything out of this discussion, what's your key takeaway?
I'm probably going to repeat myself from the last podcast we had, but go
No,
outside. It is so good for you, and I will never stop saying that, because that's the reason I make videos online and I do what I do, because I just think it's such a powerful tool in so many ways, to just get outside, challenge yourself, go on a hike, get the sun on your face, breathe in the fresh air, and just see the impact that it has if you do that regularly. It's just it's so powerful. Too many people are sitting inside and scrolling on their phones and watching TV when the world is out there waiting, and it's really profound.
The message stays the same. I love it.
I love that. I actually love that
Consistent.
that stayed constant after all you've learned. Well, mate, thank you so much for coming on, so much for sharing your story. We've been following along, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have as well. So thanks for listening. Find us at curiositycrisis.com and Curiosity Crisis on Instagram. We're on all major streaming services, so you can listen how you like. Got to ask a favour. If you got anything out of this episode, please send it to a friend. Your recommendation is worth a lot. So thank you, and catch you on the next episode.